just start by saying thank you again for doing this and welcome to this interview series that we're doing about what the future looks like and what thoughts we all have as leaders around that. And but you know, there might be many people watching this that don't know you, and so I wonder if you would just share a little bit about your role now and how you got to where you are, your journey.
Sure. Well, number one, thank you for inviting me to participate, and it's very nice to see you. Yes, my name is Mario Garcia Durham. I'm the president and CEO of the Association of Performing Arts Professionals based in Washington, D.C. We're an art service, advocacy, and trade organization for the performing arts. We're probably best known for our annual conference, which is probably one of the largest performing arts professionals conference in the world. It occurs typically every January, and there are thousands and thousands of artists, agents and managers and industry insiders there to see new work, see new artists' work, and to hopefully transmit that work all around the country and all around the world. So I encourage you to look up our site, apap365.org, and if you have any questions for me after this, be sure to reach out to me.
And before APAP, you came a long way through the performing arts world, didn't you, Mario?
Yes, I've been very fortunate. My first job was as a founding in arts administration. In 1992, I was one of the founding staff members of the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco. Had no idea how successful that organization would become, but I had the pleasure of being one of the founding staff members. So I was there for about 8 years, and then I founded my own organization, the Yerba Buena Arts and Events, which programs all the outdoor spaces there in downtown San Francisco. I founded that in the year 2000, and then I was lucky enough to be tapped to work for the National Endowment for the Arts in 2004 as the director of presenting. And I was there until 2011, and at which point I took over the role of president and CEO of the Association of Performing Arts, at that time, Presenters.
Yes, I remember. I think the change of name was a really good moment. And
nice name.
Thank you. So Mario, given our current situation with this suspension of life as we know it, clearly the work that you're doing at APAP and many of your members, that their work would be affected and impacted severely. Tell us a little bit about the impact that you are feeling now at APAP and what you're hearing from people around you.
I'm feeling immense impact. What I've told folks is that, and staff, is that what's different about this COVID-19 issue is the fact that it impacts the world, it impacts countries, it impacts the United States, it impacts counties, it impacts states, it impacts localities, it impacts your neighbors, and most importantly, it impacts your own family. So, and that is both on the health level and also on the economic level. So it's not just one or the other, it's a double whammy. And unfortunately, I have a sense of dread regarding where this is all going to end, because it is taking quite the toll on a lot of people and a lot of businesses. And so I'm just registering that and trying to be very real with our members and with my staff, that this is very, very serious, and we need to be very, very alert. And no one knows the future of what's going to happen, but to try to keep focused on the task at hand, which at times, Johann, I can tell you, is very, very difficult. So I have to be careful of all the news that I take in, what I'm watching, what I'm monitoring, because I still have work to do, as we all do. And I can't think too much about what's going to be happening in the future. So that's where I'm at right now.
Well, that's interesting to hear. I find myself also personally in this conflicting moment where on the one hand, you have to be very clear about the reality of the seriousness of this moment and how unsure it is and how long it could last and how big the impact could still be. But on the other hand, as a leader, you want to inspire people and help them along to feel hope and feel okay and feel motivated. that's a difficult line that we're having to walk. And I'm wondering what your perspective is during this time in all of that uncertainty, also in our community, of course. What role do you think the arts and artists can and should play right now?
Well, that's a complicated question because often in meetings with my staff before COVID, I would say that this issue we're dealing with as an arts organization is not life or death. Just to kind of get a perspective, because sometimes
Mm.
we get ramped up. These are life or death issues. These are life and death issues that are impacting, again, from that list, ourselves and our family and others and colleagues and coworkers. So I would say that primary focus for us right now is the health of our bodies and our beings and our families. Um, so that I think takes precedence almost over everything, because if you don't have that, what do you have, even if you're economically sound? So that's first, and I think that's still first and foremost in my mind. However, I think that people need to look to themselves to how they respond to this, how they interact with others, how they can contribute to any sort of positivity that you can hold on to at this point. Um, I don't think there's any right or wrong, nor do I think all of a sudden there's going to be a shift of like, oh, everyone needs the arts. We need to, you know, we do what we do. And I think each of us needs to pay attention to what we're called to do in times like this. I'm called, as you are, Johann, and we're privileged to be leaders of organizations. So we're using whatever we have to help the situation in those roles. But every single individual should take a look at what they can do, even if it's just staying home, if it's that basic, whatever they can do to help be part of the solution to what's going on.
That's a very sober perspective, and I appreciate that. And I think you're completely right. But I need to just tease this out a little with you. So yes, we are dealing with life and death issues. There's no doubt about the sense of priority. Um, and yet we don't want people to forget that the arts can, during this time, and does play an incredible role in making life somewhat tolerable and somewhat meaningful and somewhat hopeful. How can we, what do we need to say to make sure that the arts stays on people's radar as a force for good right now?
Well, I think, again, that's a very interesting question. I think that um, everything needs to be put into context. I, I think that we stay visible, that we stay active, that we tap into our creative selves, that leaders like myself need to allow artists to come forward in any sort of platform that we have, to allow their voices to come forward. As far as reminding that the arts are important, I think the arts need to stay involved and active and out there and at the table. Um, I don't know how much reminding is needed at this point, but I think we need to continue to play our roles and offer whatever we have. I go to, having said what I said about life or death issues, I still go to the arts for solace and
Mm.
inspiration and thought and diversion at this point. And any of those roles that the arts can play, I think is important. So again, I think each individual, each artist, each organization needs to look how they can do whatever they can do. And with us, it's the arts to be part of the solution of whatever is going on around us.
Thank you. We talked about in this moment and to get through this moment, and let's just take this wonderful step forward and say, okay, we've gotten through it. Now we're on the other side. Life returns to a new normal, which I think it will be. What's our role then? What? How do we come out of the blocks then, as arts practitioners?
Well, what's been most interesting to me and terrible is the fact that we built up these structures and systems and institutions and ways of operating that have just been kind of not completely, but almost wiped away as a result of a virus
Mm.
over the entire world, and that all these guarantees and thoughts and this is all going to happen and this is how this is going to work, all of that can just be ended in just less than 6 months. um, so I think we have to look at what lessons there are in that. I mean, there's obviously never any forever permanence, but there is there. I would think there'd be stronger structures than the ones we're seeing decimated at this moment. I think that after the virus abates or is under control, that there's going to be a lot of casualties, a lot of, not just in the arts organizations, but my God, in DC, where I live, it's like, all the restaurants, what happens to all of those businesses, the infrastructure, all the things that we count on. Um, so I think that we need to look around us and see who's still standing. And I think that one thing that I've been thinking about is that after we see who's still standing, if APAP is one of those organizations, because I don't think there are any guarantees for anyone at this moment,
Yeah.
that we look to see what we can do. If another sister organization did not make it through this time, what can we do that they were doing? How can we help situation? Um,
Mm.
I do feel, I know it's a overused analogy, but it is like a war in a sense, and I think there will definitely be casualties. And if people don't recognize that, I don't think they'll be as prepared enough, because it's
Mm.
going to be really difficult. But I think we need to assess who's still standing, what can we do now to move forward, and most importantly, how can we help each other? How can we help artists? How can we help arts organizations? How can we help communities? I think
Mm.
that'll be something we need to all ask ourselves.
I think the nature of our business, the performing arts business, is to gather people
Yes,
physically.
yes,
And I guess that's the nature of human beings as well. That's
right.
we want to do that, and we will do that when we can, and be social together. But I think the challenge for the performing arts is probably very acute compared to, say, visual arts or other art forms, or online arts. Is that moment of trying to get people physically together again. What are you hearing from people around you about that moment of how do you get people together again?
Well, I think some, from what I've been hearing, some ideas have been that, when we have the pleasure of reconvening again, human to human, that we'll still be coming off of the great fear and the psychological impact of this virus and what it has done. So I think that we'll be easing back into situations that we feel safe, but also that allow for human to human interaction. So
Mm.
I've been thinking about houses, all of the wonderful venues that you have. When we go back into, will there be performances that are spaced out? You know, and you don't sell that many seats because you have very special seats as far as for rehearsals and how the musicians, for example, would be on stage. Are they, fully fully safe from any sort of possible continued contamination, et cetera. So I think that those will be some real solutions to that. So that's about all I can think right now. I mean, you're right. We're about performing arts and human to human interaction, and that doesn't change. It has modified over the life of the world, of course, and I think that we'll be flexible and have to modify as well. And then someday, I think we will go back to a time, I hope, that we're able to be much closer together.
Yeah. Well, I believe you're right. I think we will gather again because we must.
Yes,
And in many ways that defines life.
exactly.
So yes, I think we will get back to it. And I love. I've always known you as a person who cares and who's humbly connected to what's going on around you. And so for us to have that humility and figure out how can we help and how can we be useful at that moment to our community. Is there anything, thoughts you want to share or encouragement you want to share to artists who are going through the most horrible time in you can imagine right now?
Yes, well, I mean, yes. Sorry, there's a lot of thoughts in my mind right now. Um, uh, Artist and everyone, I would say. Oh my God, was it over 20 million unemployed? What happens to your family, your food, your roof over your head? So many are impacted. I guess, the first couple of weeks, to be totally honest, I kept hoping that this was not reality, that this would go away, and
Mm,
that what I saw coming in waves um, was not going to occur. And I had a deep feeling, it's like, this isn't happening. This really, I'm going to wake up from this. This is not real, but it is real.
mm,
And I think most people now have shifted into the acceptance of reality and trying to make the best path forward. But I've been also trying to think of analogies that maybe I can hang on to as a person. I need these analogies to give me some sense of comfort, no matter how real it is or not. But I did go through the AIDS crisis,
mm,
and even though now it's still a terrible disease that has moved from the initial phases. And the reason I mention this specifically is that there was a time in the early 80s um, where no one knew where this came from. People didn't know you got it from kissing, or whether you got it from touching, or whether you got it from passing. And I had forgotten about those times, that it was a deep uncertainty and deep fear because you didn't know. And I feel similarly in that situation now, that, you know, a friend of ours had worn the mask, he'd done everything. He was a model person for coronavirus, and he still got the virus. So
mm.
I'm sensing that same kind of fear and terror that you feel, like you don't know exactly how this is happening. The good part is that we eventually did come out of that, but it was very, very difficult. And the not knowingness, that's what drove me crazy, and that's what I think drives people crazy. Where is this leading? And so anyway, I mentioned that we did get through that, but it does remind me of that time where you're kind of, what do we do? How does this happen? Et cetera. And I just feel we're very much in those moments now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is an analogy that is useful right now, is to remember we did get through that.
Yeah.
Well, Mario, thank you again. It's always nice to talk to you, but thank you for sharing your perspectives on this moment and the industry we're in, and just the human perspective in this. Thank you so much. It's really nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Johann. And you take care, and let's stay in contact.
And please stay safe, Mario.
All right. Same to you and your family.